Instruct your dad's mom to release a better-looking music photo than my mom's. King Harris ran his mouth a few weeks ago. Now, it's begging. It appears that 50 Cent, the man he ridiculed, is producing a documentary that could ruin the music of the Harris family. And King might have regretted what he said. The begging, our knowledge and ignorance. If even half of the rumors about it are true. There were rumors that 50 Cent was working on a documentary titled Surviving T-Music and Tiny King around the beginning of March 2026. Prior to those rumors, Harris was among 50 Cent's most outspoken opponents. He made music, videos, t-shirts, diss tracks, and a cannabis product specifically for 50 Cent. It's not at all subtle. To understand why King Harris switched from attack mode to desperation mode, you have to understand what he actually said and did before the documentary came out. Due to the fact that King's behavior did not conform to the standard rap beef reaction, in a way that most hip-hop fans would find improper, it was intimate. Your mom is dead as hell. How did each of you grow up? I wasn't brought up that way. That's King Harris's response to 50 Cent in a video that went viral after 50 posted a derogatory image of Tiny Harris, King's mother. King didn't think twice. The song was directed at 50 Cent's late mother, Sabrina Jackson, who died in a fire when 50 Cent was just 8 years old. Don't go. I'm not going back to my mom. I refuse to leave. King frequently declared that he would not tolerate anyone making offensive music. His mom. But by doing this, he offended the mother of someone else, a person who has passed away and cannot respond. This differentiation is significant since it is the source of 50 Cent's escalation and the public's turn against him. Request that your dad's mother post a better-looking picture of herself. The video wasn't King's end. He was wearing a t-shirt with a picture of Sabrina Jackson on it. He presented Ms. Jackpack, a cannabis strain that features her image on the label. Additionally, he released disc singles with lyrics like "You Were Made" from 50 Cent because your mama gave it cheap on songs like Drop Top Music. Mixed music was the response. Many witnessed a young man defending his family. Most people saw a 21-year-old making fun of a deceased woman in order to achieve popularity on the internet. 50 Cent, whose second career has been built around planned retaliation, saw music in every action. The internet did what the internet does. Commentary outlets saved screenshots, reprinted videos, and analyzed every word King spoke, every product he launched, every phrase he rapped, and all of that data resulted in a permanent record that was unchangeable, irreversible, and unjustifiable. When the documentary rumors surfaced, King's acts were more than just memories. Thus, that record would be significant later. They were evidence of incitement. When people asked why he would pursue a 21-year-old, they acted as 50 Cent's defense. So, as soon as the documentary rumors started to circulate, the plot started to take shape. King had gone too far. Now, 50 Cent had the power to forever end the conversation. It seems sense that he lacks poise. Anyone who is paying attention can see why he would want the documentary taken down from any event. And to understand why, we have to go back to the origins of 50 Cent and T.I., which took place long before King was old enough to pick a side. This beef music did not originate with King Harris. It wasn't sparked by documentaries, Instagram postings, or songs. In the same year, two individuals from separate sections of the country became well-known in hip-hop, and they circled each other in the music business for 20 years. The story of 50 Cent's escape from Queens, New York following 9 bullets is told in his 2003 album, Get Rich or Die Tryin'. Trap Music, the album that cemented T's prominence as a musician, was released in the same year. This self-described king of the South contributed to the development of a whole Atlanta rap style. Both men sold millions of dollars from their respective areas. Loyalty music could be forced by both men. The rivalry between the South and New York transcended cultural distinctions in the hip-hop world in which both men resided. It was structural. Album sales, radio play, and nominations for music awards all contributed to a competition that was palpable without using words. For years, the dispute between 50 Cent and T went unnoticed. There were only two musicians in the same profession who had treated each other with enough decency or contempt to maintain good relations. There were no public altercations or diss tunes. When Swiss Beats and Timbaland's Versus Fight series emerged during the pandemic in 2020, this was changed. Verse matched legendary performers in live broadcast catalog displays. In Music T, I began openly promoting a clash versus 50 Cent. T was likened to the 2007 sales competition between 50 Cent's album Curtis and Kanye West's Graduation, which 50 famously lost and used as a pretext to take a short break from music. T said that he could compete with music because he had the hits, the catalog, and the cultural influence. He made his case on every media available to him, including Instagram Lives, podcasts, and radio interviews. creating an image of a confrontation that he believed the music business should see. But in interviews, podcasts, and Instagram postings, 50 Cent steadily decreased. 50 Music asserted that they had moved past such type of music. He cited his television empire, especially the Power franchise on Stars, to show that he was now operating at a different level. It was hinted that he was not interested in music wars. Even more painful than the rejection itself was the manner 50 expressed it. Instead of just declining, he dismissed, as if T were asking to be seated at a table he hadn't earned. He treated the request as if it were insignificant. For a performer who had spent 20 years establishing himself as Southern hip-hop royalty, that rejection was personal. Rather than apathy, T perceived it as terror and contempt. As a result, the back and forth continued through sporadic internet exchanges, just enough to sustain the animosity, but not enough to escalate into a full-fledged conflict. That balance lasted for years. When music arrived in February 2026, the equilibrium was disrupted. T accused 50 Cent of cowardice during an appearance on Shannon Sharpe's Nightcap podcast, claiming that behind-the-scenes conversations had revealed 50's initial desire to do the verses only for him to publicly back out. T released a disc single titled Let Him Know, which was shot in 50 Cent's home territory in New York City. To highlight the point, the song's lyrics criticized the 50's music scene, his move to acting, and what they saw as inconsistencies in the macho guy mentality of the 50's. 50 Cent's response lacked melody. Instead, Music shared a video that had surfaced from a 2003 court case that implied he had helped the police. So designating him as a snitch, in hip-hop, the meaning of that word extends beyond offense. It damages a person's credibility, honesty, and entire musical foundation. And with that one move, 50 Cent changed the dispute from being about who had the best catalog to a referendum on T.I.'s personality. From that soil, everything else grew. The family engagement, the diss recordings, the dead mother jokes, and the documentary. It all boils down to this moment in time, the point where the struggle changed from music to reputation. Once that line was crossed, there was no way for the court to return to innocent competition. It was now a contest to determine who could cause 50 Cent the most enduring damage. A man whose cunning public relations strategies had previously destroyed careers. The instruments at his disposal were far more powerful than what T and his family could compose. T had bars. A production company was owned by 50 Cent. That imbalance would characterize all that followed music. The first person in King Harris, T's family, to join the fire without fully understanding its warmth was his son. King gets involved in the family dispute. Music before King Harris became involved. 50 Cent and T's disagreement was already intimate. King's involvement, however, transformed it from a two-person standoff into something that simultaneously enveloped a whole household music and unfurled on all social media platforms. King Harris was born on August 25, 2004, and grew up in the public eye. He took part in T and Music Tiny, a home reality series that ran from 2011 to 2017. At the age of 21, the Harris family's daily activities were accompanied by when the 50 Cent conflict escalated through viral moments on the show. Such furious arguments with his parents, King was both young enough to act impulsively and mature enough to make his own judgments. That song demonstrated a willingness to voice his opinions regardless of the consequences. His reputation as an outspoken person had already been established. A specific trigger pulled King into the battle. He posted a negative photo of Tiny Harris on Instagram during a conversation with T. 50 Cent, after the post went too far by demeaning a man's wife, especially in a public forum with millions of followers. The Harris family responded as a group. As a result, the fight became a domestic one rather than a professional one. Damani and King, his older brother, immediately joined him. Damanis, on the other hand, were fairly restrained, whereas Kane's responses were unpredictable and relentless. His video mocking 50 Cent's late mother went viral on the internet in a matter of hours. There was a huge response. Both the language and the music were unadulterated, unvarnished. King made the same point over and over in that video. He wanted it to be acknowledged. He wanted it to cut. He wanted it to be acknowledged. He wanted it to cut. And for a moment, music did attract attention. But it wasn't the kind of exposure that propels a career forward. It was the kind that becomes a target. King stepped up his efforts outside of the video. The t-shirt, the diss songs, the cannabis strain, and the Harris family released roughly 6 disc recordings that were aimed at eating 50 Cent dots, drop tops, and other direct shootings. Among King's contributions were records. Damani added his own lines to the personal history of the 1950s. In interviews, T boasted about his disco dot and published a number of songs that ridiculed the 1950s migration to Hollywood. T talked about the issue and offered a complex viewpoint on his son's involvement. He stated that while he valued their allegiance, he did not like witnessing them drag into negativity. He answered, "Nah, my kids ride now. implying that they were ready to defend themselves as the family was being attacked. It was an effective slogan in hip-hop culture, where family loyalty is highly valued. However, it also tacitly endorsed King's behavior. The same audience that King needed to build his career was swiftly turned off by his behavior. There was a structural problem. King had to use moderation in his conflict, and music was not one of his weapons. Every time he pushed a new video, product, or song, he gave 50 Cent additional content without expecting anything in return. 50 Cent didn't have to respond since Music King was hurting himself. With every new provocation, King seems more reckless and 50 Cent's ultimate response, in whatever form it came, seemed more merited. "Your mama ain't dead," my mom remarked. "Go decorate that with some flowers." Such statements and similar ones were denounced by people on the internet. Most observers concurred that King had gone too far. Making fun of a deceased woman was perceived as fundamentally different than criticizing a living opponent. Regardless of the music, King, then 21 years old, was against a 50-year-old media mogul who had spent decades perfecting the long game. However, 50 Cent barely listened to the music. On Instagram, he posted memes about cues. He shared posts with enigmatic captions. A line from one of his music promotion tracks, "Many saw his Power Origin series as a cautionary tale. They'll get used to leaving me alone." Funny, there was a noticeable difference. 50 Cent was very inactive at this time, preferring to let suspense take its course. The Harris family was overflowing the area with belongings. The constraint wasn't accidental. This is how 50 Cent has operated for decades, absorbing insults, cataloging them, and waiting for the appropriate moment to respond with something out of proportion. To do that, he employed Ja Rule. He collaborated with Rick Ross. The pattern is the same every time. After letting the other side go too far, respond with something they can't match. In this situation, a social media post or a verse would not be the right response. It would be a documentary, a long piece of content meant to change a story forever rather than win a news cycle. Additionally, the Harris family was going to encounter music that was far more destructive than they had anticipated. The documentary is called 50 Cent's Nuclear Option. If diss tracks are the bullets in a rap fight, then a documentary is an airstrike. Furthermore, musician 50 Cent, who had previously demonstrated the potential impact of a timely exposure on a person's career, intimated that he was loading the payload at the beginning of March 2026. Rumors about a documentary titled Surviving T and Tiny began to spread. Shortly after the family disc recordings reached their pinnacle, the title, Kelly, the documentary series that was crucial in altering the public's perception of art, deliberately mimicked Surviving R. Kelly and assisted in prosecuting him. 50 Cent was making a statement by labeling his project in the same method before a single frame of video was shown. This was not intended to be a synopsis of a rap feud. An indictment was planned. With the remark music, 50 Cent personally fueled the rumors. "Do you recall how silent I became prior to the documentary?" He posted an Instagram screenshot of a radio station article on the documentary, which has since been removed. "They will ask you about your 20 cases of sexual assault. I hope your advertising tour is not ruined by this. Dame thought I wouldn't show up. Consider consulting a crisis public relations specialist." 50 Cent had demonstrated his ability to take pre-existing accusations and public rumors, turn them into a polished musical performance, and turn them into a cultural event where permanently altered people's opinions about the subject. 50 Cent was expressing himself clearly. He has done this before. He had done it well, and now he was preparing to do it again. The inclusion of 20 examples of sexual assault indicates that the documentary music will undoubtedly center on the accusations that have trailed T and Tiny since 2021. These were serious charges. T and Tiny were accused of coercion, drug usage, and sexual music abuse by over a dozen women starting in 2021. Former music colleague Sabrina Peterson helped to the first wave by sharing anonymous testimonials on Instagram about events when victims claimed to have been drugged at parties and then forced to perform non-consensual behaviors. There were subsequent lawsuits, one of which was filed as recently as 2024. However, the majority of these lawsuits were dismissed due to procedural difficulties, such as statutes of limitations. There have been no convictions. Tiny and T Music have denied all charges, stating that they were consenting adults in any private activities they took part in. Nevertheless, a documentary can cause harm without a conviction. It needs a story, a well-planned, prepared, edited account that ties disparate claims together into a logical storyline. Thanks to his media presence and music production infrastructure, 50 Cent was able to create exactly that. The presidency was already in place. Kelly did not lead the way in getting by with R.R. Kelly's conviction alone, but it had such a significant effect on public perception that it was inevitable that legal action would be taken. The same tactic was being used by 50 Cent. T had a lot on the queue. in addition to his real estate ventures, public speaking, and trap music museum. His post-trap career was built on his efforts as a family man, musician, philanthropist, businessman, and community leader. Everything depended on maintaining a positive image. A primetime documentary that brought up the assault allegations may lead to boycotts, shatter partnerships, and alter how the public views his legacy. For King, the results were equally disastrous. His emerging musical career was built on his last name. All of Tay's benefits, including relationships, a venue for his music, and notoriety, came from being his child. No viral video or Dasan could overcome the boundaries created by a documentary that damaged Harris's reputation by association. Scandal-plagued musicians are reluctant to sign with record labels. Collaborators remove themselves from one another. Streaming service playlists are selected with controversy in mind. The repercussions of a successful documentary would impact every aspect of King's career at the exact moment he was trying to make a name for himself. As an independent musician, there was also a cruel irony in the situation. King's involvement in the beef was motivated by his desire to preserve and enhance the reputation of his family. The songs, products, videos, but the same behaviors gave 50 Cent more firepower. Every tape of King criticizing mother music from the 1950s might be edited into a documentary to illustrate the character of the Harris family. A diss track's entire lyrics could be cited. King had inadvertently used his family's support as a weapon against them. According to insider claims, T was devastated by the alleged early revelations. The gossip networks presented King as a young man looking for a way out after talking his way into an unwinnable conflict. Although it's unclear if King got in touch with 50 Cent, the logic makes sense. The documentary's impacts had a completely different impact than anything King has experienced in the business so far. A few weeks ago, the current state of affairs and the aftermath. One of the most vocal participants in the conflict was King Harris, but he has subsequently become much quieter. Diss tracks are now less common. Cannabis branding and contentious products are no longer talked about. Whether the silence was the result of a direct plea to 50 Cent is only known to King and his inner entourage, advice from relatives or supervisors, or simply the natural cooling of an uncontrollable circumstance. T hasn't backed down. For his part, in reaction to the documentary rumors, Pete challenged 50 Cent to compete in any music media, including Doc for Doc. This statement suggests that he is either projecting confidence to control the story, or is actually unafraid of what the project might contain. Given his prior legal troubles, music, including federal guns charges that resulted in jail time, and his expertise managing public crises, Tite might view the documentary threat as manageable, but manageable for a seasoned artist with decades of crisis experience is not the same as bearable for his 21-year-old son. Pay attention to your mom. Just a few weeks ago, my mother was King. Confident, musical, combative, and confident that the Harris family name was strong enough to endure whatever 50 Cent threw at them. A documentary and a diss track, however, have different timelines and scales. A news cycle is a diss track's lifetime. A documentary is available on a streaming service. It is shared, the music is discussed, and it has been mentioned in articles, court cases, and conversations for years. It's possible that King was prepared for a street fight. A media fight with someone who earns a living by building media empires was something he was unprepared for. Fan reactions on websites such as Music, Reddit have been contentious. Some people commend 50 Cent for his strategic patience. Since he considered the documentary threat to be the last checkmate in a beef, he never needed to win via music. Some criticized the dynamic as a whole. There is a public fight between a 50-year-old media mogul with millions of followers and a 21-year-old whose main platform is Instagram. The differences in resources, authority, and age raise questions about proportionality. What this feud means for hip-hop in 2026 is being discussed differently. Aggression has always been valued in this genre, even among those who believe King is to blame. The musician who is unyielding meets energy with energy and sees every insult as an act of war has always been rewarded. But these days, the game has changed. There is more to artists than just musicians. They are brands, media executives, and creators of content. They also have access to far more equipment than just microphones and mixing boards. A documentary has the power to alter a person's public image in a way that will persist throughout their career, something that 100 diss tracks cannot. King Harris entered a universe where he was employing out-of-date rules, a completely new game when he started releasing movies about 50 Cent's mother. Another topic is 50 Cent's personal motivations. The documentary creates content for his production company if it is genuine in achieving more than just the beef. As a result, his name is still in the news cycle. His reputation as someone to be avoided is strengthened. 50 resentment has been employed by Cent as a business tactic. Moreover, the T documentary has already achieved its primary goal of discouragement. The threat changed the dynamics of DATC's beef, whether or not it airs. The project's very presence was enough to fundamentally alter the power dynamics. In other words, the weapon's potency allows it to operate without being shot. For King Harris, the lesson may be the most difficult in the entertainment industry. The person who speaks the loudest does not win. It has the most clout. According to King, Cent has a production company, a distribution network, and a history of using personal grudges to create lucrative material. Begging was not a sign of weakness, even if it could have been too late to halt what had already begun. It was a sign that King had finally realized the extent of the game he had entered. This brings the video to a close. For more interesting videos like this one, look at the cards on your screen.